Hey Wayne, how are you? Alright, let's get started. Reminder, if you haven't signed in on the sign, Sue's sending it around the table. Make sure you get signed in so that we can track everything. Welcome to our March safety meeting. I want to start with, I didn't get any, raise your hand if you're an instructor. Raise your hand if you had a student do a solo or test for Silas. Who do you have? Eric Bloom. Is Eric here? All right, Eric had back surgery. Eric got his private pilot. Silas was his instructor. Tim got his instrument rating. Congratulations, Tim. All right, do we have any solos or anything else? Congratulate any members? Okay. We'll have more next session because the weather will be better. All right, so tonight we're, just to give you sort of an overview of what we're doing is first thing up is Dan McCarroll is going to talk about his electrical failure up in Frederick. And then we're going to do some club updates. And we have, again, I don't know if everybody remembers Alexis Smolik, but she's the supervising air marshal at a BWI. 1L. Marshal is spelled with 1L with the air marshals, 2 L's with the U.S. Marshal. Did not know that. She's Thurgood Marshal. Thurgood Marshal. I don't know how many L's that was. She's going to give us a presentation on the TSA security, which will count towards the instructor's security requirement for TSA, and we have the certificates as well. So we're going to start with Dan. Where are you, Dan? Come on up. Dan's going to start off.
Yeah. Oh, I can.
Okay. Yeah. I need you standing
right here.
Right about here.
Oh, we're videotaping.
We're videotaping.
Great. All right, you can change the slides.
I will.
So in 1981, I had a radio failure. I had an instructor sitting right next to me. We were in the pattern, and the only thing I remember really from it was, Dan, don't worry, they're going to give us light gun signals. They gave us a green light gun. We landed at Sikorsky Airport in Bridgeport. It was great. 37 some odd years later, and I didn't fly that whole time, so 37 years later, a buddy of mine says, hey, Dan, I'm coming up to visit you. What are you doing? I said, well, let's go flying. He says, oh, can I bring my wife? She's only 4 months pregnant. She could still go flying. So we go. So you know this is going to work out, right? So we spend about an hour on the ground, and so I'm going to talk about some of the things I'm glad I did. One of them is I like explaining what we do and how safe the airplane is, because when they look at show them the engine, they're like, oh, that looks like a Volkswagen engine. So I spent some time on that, dual magnetos, two spark plugs, a lot of redundancy. Get inside the plane, everybody's getting settled, and she says, Dan, do you need this? I said, no, the POH, leave it right there. I only need that if there's an emergency. So we take off. We go out Woolly Gate, start heading north. We're just going to go short of, just a little bit east of Gettysburg. Let Aaron do some, standard rate turns to the right, climb 500 feet. And it is beautiful. It's clear. February 10th, Sunday, at around 9 o'clock in the morning. I recommend that day, right? It is gorgeous. So now Aaron taps me and he says, Dan, he said, he taps me on the leg. He's been tapping me on the shoulder. And he taps me on the leg, and he points to the GPS. It's initializing, and then he forgets that we're on a Unicode. He says, "Is that right?" I said, "No, that's fine." So I shut it off, and then I look over, and there's the low voltage light. Amp meter is showing me the negative number. So I have no idea when the light went on because, I'm going to be honest. My scan, I think I would have seen it. But I was also a little distracted showing them how to fly how flying a plane is, how much fun it is to be at, 5,000 feet, 6,000 feet, flying standard rate turns. Now, I just came out of a steep turn because Priyanka asked me, she says, this is kind of boring. Can this plane do anything else? That's when, she broke the thing. Okay, next slide. All right, so I gave you the overview. Now we're going to talk about options and decisions. So I'll show you the overview stuff because this is pretty neat technology. So this is just off of the FAA stuff. We left at 9 a.m., went out Woolly Gate, got up to 9:29 was when Aaron tapped me on the leg and asked me if it was okay, what was going on. And that's when I started to check the circuit breakers, make sure I knew where I was, make sure my iPad was working because it looked like that may be my only, besides my chart. And then at around, about 2 minutes later, I'm already heading back because I'm not going to do any more stuff. I said, hey, listen, we're probably going to have breakfast at Frederick instead of lunch. And I said to Priyanka, I said, hey, Priyanka, can I have that POH? And she said, what, do we have an emergency? I said, not yet, but I said, I want to get ahead of things. So I knew I needed to make a call, so I was too far to call Frederick. I could call ATC, but in retrospect, that would have been a great thing to realize that would have been a good option. And I'll talk about some of the other options I did. So now it's clear. I got no wind. I got plenty of gas. Engine's running good. Second radio goes out, so now I'm not calling anybody. And that happened in like 3 minutes by about 9:36. I had no transponders, so the entire stack, and it's all really good looking equipment because the oldest thing in there at this point is the 430, right? Everything else has been replaced like weeks ago, so none of it's working. My backup handheld radio is in a box in Florida. My wife confirmed that the other day. So now I could have gone to a number of airports because I'm about here when I'm, I could have any of those options. But there were two things I decided. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. I had no trouble with the engine, full tank of gas, clear day, and I knew Frederick really well. The only problem with Frederick is I'm not talking to anybody, right? So I decided I was going to go to Frederick. My only concern was, hey, I got to stay outside of the CIFRA and I got to stay outside of the airspace at Frederick until I'm really committed to this. So I got down to around 3,000 feet, and my iPad was great. It kept me situation where I was using looking outside the plane, looking at the iPad, but I also kind of knew where I was. And I said, I'm going to do an extended, about a 7-mile 45, because I'm going to not descend too soon, but I'm going to make sure they have a chance to see me. It's now around 9:30, 9:40, 9:45-ish, so it's a Sunday morning. There's not a lot of folks flying except for us, and we're always looking outside. We're always vigilant. So I get on the 45, and I start to descend to 1,300. So I'm at. And the whole time, I'm looking for the light gun signal. And I'm telling them, hey, we're going to get a light gun signal. Don't you worry. We never got one. So I get on the 45. I decide, well, I'm landing. I'm going to have to explain this to somebody. Taxi, no trouble. Now I did cross a tail dragger that was going down to the departure end of 23, and I don't know why I paid attention to it, but I looked at my watch and I recorded the time. I parked at Signature. I went inside, got the phone number to the tower. It took her a while. In the meantime, I called Potomac. And I said, listen, I'm just calling to make sure I'm doing everything right. And they said, yep, you're fine. I got no reports. We're looking. And yeah, you disappeared. You went dark right about here. That was, I kind of told them about where I would, and they said, yeah, we weren't tracking you, but that kind of makes sense. And I think they were looking at ADSB out. I don't know. So finally get a hold of the tower. I spent a half an hour. First I'm talking to a controller, and they says, hey, I need you to talk to my supervisor. So I talked to the supervisor. And all I was going to do is say, hey, I'm 781 Foxtrot Mike, Dan McCarroll, penetrated Delta, did not communicate with you, landed safely, I'm parked at Signature if you need me to do anything. After about 20 minutes of talking with her, and I will not tell you her name, she said, sir, are you going to be submitting a NASA report? I was like, well, yeah, I was gonna, because I don't know if I've created a deviation. I didn't get to declare an emergency, so I don't know how that works. So I'm unfamiliar with this. So I got the impression that they had no idea that I was there. If I hadn't called, the next time they would have known about that aircraft is when we retrieved it to go home. A couple of things. Next slide. So this is my actual ADSB out, and so at the bottom of the slide, if anybody's interested, there's a great place where they have this repository. You don't have to pay anything to use it, and they almost have an unlimited. I went to all the other places, and they make me pay for anything that's more than 781, more than 12 flights. Well, this one, if you're going to use it for commercial purposes, you got to pay for it. But if you're just going to do this, and it tags everything, it'll tell you exactly what your transponder was set at, what your altitude was. Some of the altitudes I question because I certainly wouldn't have been flying at 3,600 feet. I would have been at 35, But my point is, you can see where I went black here at 3. Transponder went out, and it was only 8 minutes after we detected the first problem. So I probably didn't have battery working somewhere around here, but I was talking fine to approach. The handoffs went fine inside the CIFRA. And then around 10 o'clock, I was on the ground. Maybe 10:15, I was parked, and I was talking till about 10:45. Next slide. So I did a bunch of. I drove back out to the airport that night to make sure that I hadn't missed anything. There was a V-belt on there because I wanted to provide the most information. So I spent a little bit of time looking at this retrospectively. So one thing I would say is this. We spend very little time while we're getting our private pilot's license simulating a lot of things because, nobody's going to want to pay for 2 hours of what do you do in electrical failure. I'm not saying that we need to, but what I am saying is I hadn't spent enough time with it. If Ed Chilokee in 1981 hadn't talked to me about the light gun signals, I would have known about them. They're fairly intuitive, but I probably wouldn't have had enough confidence to say, hey, if I don't have them, he said to me, if you don't get them and you're nobody's on the runway and you're clear to land, in your mind and you're safe, land. So I remembered that too. It isn't that we didn't cover it when I got checked out. It isn't that I didn't cover it when I was flying in DeLand for a year. But that AFECT experience really helped in terms of, hey, we've got an emergency. I explained it to Priyanka. She was the least concerned about it, even though she was the cause of it. And then
isn't that typical?
It is. I have a theory about that. Okay, next slide. At the bottom of this, it just says, short of anything else, fly the airplane, make sure you avoid danger. I mean, it's all the stuff we're always taught. Pre-flight. So here's when you start questioning yourself. We've all started the airplane before, and the the low voltage light is on, and we say, and then it goes out. Then we check the amp meter, looks good, it's above 0. It was on, it went out. When I went back to idle after my run-up, it flickered a little bit. I checked the amp meter because it's got my attention. That's where it's directing you to look. I don't know if that was an indication of what's going on, but I don't think that battery or that alternator was helping shortly after I took off. So I'm not sure when it went. It could have been bad then, and I just didn't catch it. All right, so you second guess yourself on that. Next thing is scan. I can't tell you when that low voltage light went on, and I don't remember deliberately looking at the amp meter. So indicators of electrical failure, I mean, I kind of talked about them, but I read a whole bunch of things about how do you check and make sure that your amp meter is working. It's not just stuck on 0, good to go, and if it's load meter, pin to 0, and so pitot heat, hydraulic pumps, fuel pumps, those things do it. Yeah, electric flaps. Oh yeah, we'll talk about electric flap use. So is it an emergency? Well, it's up to me. It's up to us, right? As pilot in command, what's an emergency? If I'm flustered, confused, and having a bad day, it can be an emergency. The implications of that are, and I really hadn't walked all through this. If I declare an emergency, is ATC going to judge me? They may, if I then have demonstrated I've done something hazardous, or flown into IMC, inadvertent, and I'm not, and I didn't look at the weather, and they said, hey, how could you think 1,500 feet was good, right? That can happen. But it was good to go through that and realize I was doing all the things right. I was on a long 45. I was looking for traffic, and I wasn't gonna, blocking me off. I considered, because I was flying in at 2-3, I considered doing a 10-mile approach, and then I said, wait, I got a good engine. 10-mile final's no good for traffic pattern, so that's why I flew southeast. I think I would do that again. Next slide. So the AIM says, hey, if you got a transponder squawk 7,600, if you don't see light gun signals, enter the pattern cautiously. So they can't cover everything, but if you got an emergency, declare an emergency. All right, and then I think that's the last slide, and I got one. Okay, before questions. Then I did some retrospective thinking about what else I could do. Went on, YouTube, because there's real good truth out there in Jugal. So what I did is I realized I could have grabbed my cell phone and called Potomac. I have that number. It's probably the last number I called, and say, hey, could you call Frederick? Because the FCC is who says we can't use our cell phones. The FAA doesn't. They don't weigh in on that. It's the FCC that says we can't use cell phones on aircraft. So I'm willing to do that, but I don't have my cell phone sitting there. I've got my iPad. I don't even know if I could have told you where my cell phone was, but I didn't think about it. I could have had that Icon radio that my father bought me for Christmas in 2004, but that was in Florida. Last thing that I learned. If I had to go around, and I was pretty sure I wasn't going to have to go around, I probably shouldn't have had 40 degrees of flaps, especially if I didn't have my alternator, right? I would have probably been fine at Frederick, but it would have been a real slow climb out to go do it again. It turns out I had enough juice to pull it out, because when I cleaned up when I got off, the flaps came up, but it wasn't enough to do anything else. Anybody have any questions? And clearly I've covered a topic you're all familiar with.
Rick Niles has a question.
Go ahead, Rick.
Why did you choose to go to a Tower Airport?
Hold on, Dave.
Yeah.
So the question is why did you choose to go to a towered airport?
So I've only been flying, out west, and Ken Urban is my instructor, so Ken always has me go east. So I said, I'm going to go west, right? So I've been flying west, going up to Carlisle, and I knew Frederick. I like to go on Sundays to look at the closed day OPA, because that's when I usually end up getting out there, So I'm really familiar with it. And my calculus was, it's 9:30 in the morning. What other knuckleheads are going to be out there flying? And we've all been out there around 9:30 in the morning, or some of us have. It's really, if the weather's good, you may have 2 or 3 aircraft in the pattern. I felt like I had the best opportunity in terms of anything. Now, it took us 15 minutes to do that, and I knew there were other airports, but I'd never been to those. I knew Frederick. That was all.
That's a good reason.
Yeah.
When you were making your decisions and you determined that you were safe to continue flying because you had a good engine and you had fuel, did you ever consider maybe I should go to an airport that might have repair facilities?
Which is why I went to Frederick.
Dan,
Well, you mentioned that.
repeat the question for the camera.
Oh, so the question was, when I knew that I had lost electrical, was I going to, did I make a decision to where I went to based on the repair facilities? I actually didn't. I knew intuitively that Frederick had a pretty robust logistics capability, so I don't think I would have let that weigh in if it was a little bit, like if the weather was degrading, I would have gone to one of those, one of a couple airports right there that I wouldn't have had to talk to anybody. I would just have to figure out a couple things. And frankly, I was a little bit calmer because I had people in the...
What is that? The battery, okay. The alternator, okay. So he's still out there. There are one or other people that we know of that is similar to Mr. Salau. It's a sad story. He's got some mental issues. Luckily, he has never seemed to have shown a threat to anybody. His dad is a very wealthy doctor, very prominent family. He's the lone sheep of the family. Everybody's got one, but unfortunately, he gets out there, and the laws precipitate this type of behavior. So it's a really great catch. Everybody knows about him within TSA, the general aviation community, which is a really good thing. There's eyes out there. You know, it's your plane. You want to put that guy in a plane with your family? I wouldn't. So that's a really good news story. The other interesting tidbit, though, there is somebody else out there. You probably heard about her on the news. She gets her jollies by getting on board commercial aircraft without having a boarding pass. She sneaks on the plane. A couple months ago, she was in London. We ended up getting her a free ticket home, but she's still out there. They lock her up for a little bit, but they get through the system. There's people like that out there. So you always have to be very cautious as a flight school student, owner, aircraft owner, or owner of an aircraft, to always be on the guard for somebody like that. You know, check them out. If you don't know who they are, just use your good instincts. They may seem very nice, very well dressed. Mr. Salau showed up at Signature, I don't know how many times, over at Reagan and at Baltimore. Very well dressed, very well spoken, speaks the lingo. He's as nutty as a fruitcake, so you don't want him in your plane. Next one is review honor Seattle Tacoma insider threat. I'm going to go really into the insider threat now, because that is the latest, greatest threat to aviation right now. Folks that are, for whatever reason, are disgruntled. They just lost it for whatever reason. The gentleman who was a mechanic at Seattle Tacoma worked for Alaska Airlines, stole the aircraft. We don't know the rest of the story. Thank goodness no one got hurt in that one, only he did. But they're out there. There was another incident too recently. You'll see a lot of general aviation. I get the alerts in TSA with whatever's going on, anything going on. But there was a 172 was stolen in Texas, and generally those are repos. There's one buyer who's disgruntled against the other buyer. They're claiming it's my plane, no, it's his plane, and then the fighters are launched, and we find out that it's really not an incident, thank goodness. But they're still out there. We don't see a lot of trends, though, in terms of, years ago, there used to be a lot of thefts for aircraft from drug runners. We don't see that so much anymore because of the efforts of the general aviation community, which is a really good thing. UTAC corporate pilot stole jet. No, that was the one who was mad at his girlfriend. No, it's always a woman, right? But insider threats, mental health, domestic issues. This is where your coworkers, and this is for every workplace, whether it's whatever you do, somebody's having a bad day. You know, we don't really want them around guns, airplanes, and obviously we don't want that within our community. Next slide, please. Section 3, any new threats posed by GA. The good thing is not a lot of intel out there in the world in terms of Al-Qaeda, that type of stuff. It's really drones. We were just on vacation, and we're on the beach, someplace warm and sunny, and I'm laying there nice and quiet, and I've been doing this aviation security stuff for about 30 years. And what do I see? It's a drone. I'm on the beach. That old lady in her bikini, I don't want that drone near me, okay? You don't want that in your airport. You see that going on, you know, report it immediately. We had a threat recently, Dublin, Ireland had a big shutdown. So keep your eyes open for those drones. You can't really you can hear them if they're low altitude. You guys experience with drones at all? The higher up they go, you can't hear them. You know what? So keep your eyes open, okay? There was one in Pakistan, I think they shut, Pakistan, Islamabad. Shut the whole airport down. So who knows what they did to the drone operator in that one. Then the guy who killed his girl, another woman again, killing with the drone, okay? Stealing of aircraft, obvious. We all use good procedures when we secure aircraft. We put those locks on, very important. You never know. You just never know who's gonna sneak in the airport. Okay, next slide, please. TSA guidelines and applying risk-based security to the GA community. We always want to focus on people we don't know. The gentleman who was at the gas pumps, and Mr. Salau approached him. Where did he come from? Who is this guy? You know, use your good common sense, okay? You guys know, I'm not going to reiterate this and preach, but focus on people who don't know. Focus on aircraft that are not secure. Frank, I know how many times you saved my booty with gust locks. You just look out for each other. And for obvious, I'm looking in the plane, but use your good common sense. Focus on protecting infrastructure of the airport. As you know, the gate code just changed. Everybody got the email, obviously, which is a good thing. So the airport operator is doing a great job in terms of keeping on top of rolling security stuff. But also, you've got to look at the, Frank, the cameras, am I going to go into that yet or no?
Yeah,
That's the next slide, okay. Okay, this is, put these flyers on your desk, everybody knows GA Secure. AOPA also has some great training documents out there for GA, in case you're aware. They're nice and simple, even I can read them. They're nice and simple and tailored to the audience. They're an easy read. But in case you do see something, don't encounter the guy or gal. Call 911, please. Don't become a cop. Okay, leave that to the people who are trained for that, okay? Or if you can, call GA Secure. Just so you know, TSA does staff up that hotline. They're at the Freedom Center out in Herndon, Virginia. It's staffed by contractors. They'll have clearances. And if you call them up, they'll call 911 for you, wherever the jurisdiction is. They'll also go Jimmy O'Donnell, who works for me, for Maryland, and we'll get the cops on the scene and take care of the situation, okay? But don't encounter the person. Don't have an exchange with the person. You never know what that person may have on them, gun or whatever else, whatever their motives are. And please, please, please report suspicious activity. The very first Al-Qaeda plans for attack on the U.S. was a mass attack on using general aviation aircraft. It was a wave attack. So you never know, those plans may be dusted off in the future. You never know. It's always good. These are our planes, these are our babies. Next slide, please. That's you. Okay. GA Secure left the flyers. They're on the AOPA website. If you ever want another phone number, put it in your phone. Please. Thank you all.
Does
for
anybody
your
have any
time.
questions for Alexis? Don't be afraid. She carries a gun, but she won't shoot you unless she has to.
You survived another harrowing flight with me, Frank.
I did.
All right,
Thanks,
thank you all.
Alexis. Thank you. All righty. So just again, this is our advisory board and staff. Sue and I are running the place. Bob's chief. Phil Irving, Phil Seibel are the assistants. You can raise your hand, Phil's. Ron's here, operations. Alexis and John Ferrone are doing our safety and security, and Ken Urban back there is handling our IT.
Tim is Ron's assistant.
And Tim is helping out with Ken on the IT stuff. Which
And
is,
Ron.
I mean, helping Ron with the operation, and he's also doing some IT stuff. Tim's doing a whole lot of stuff here for us. I also want to let you know, if you didn't know, they don't want to say anything. Jenny Wong and Frank Kennedy are here, so if you get a chance, say hello to them, because they were very good to us. We're still here. So, volunteers, we're still looking for volunteers to help out. The entire administration of this organization is volunteers. Everybody who you saw on the advisory board and helping out is unpaid volunteers. So as we get into the spring, we're probably going to start doing stuff on getting the planes clean and washing them in the wash station. We can wash them in Hangar 80. We can pull them into the hangar and wash them in there. So we'll probably be doing that. We have all the supplies to wash the aircraft and make them look pretty. So if you have time and stuff, we'll be throwing out some emails asking for that to help us out with that. Let's see, future and updates. I already talked about ADSB. We're getting that on that. We may have to increase rates. The board's discussed this in the past. We'll have to sit down. We're going to review our numbers from what we've been doing in terms of income and expenses. We also have to factor in the upgrades that we're doing on the aircraft, because we're getting the ADSB. You're going to have that access, and we're trying to hopefully have enough income so that we can make the planes better and nicer. And the guys who haven't been in there, we have 0, 1, and 2 have the Stratus plug-in now to power your tablet or phone or whatever else you're using up there, or your Stratus. Let's see, maintenance issues. It's still our biggest pet peeve is the maintenance issues. Again, we don't have a full-time mechanic, so we are trying to do what we can with Dave Hopkins on the field, Larry Donaldson at Lee, and we also will go out to Frederick. We'll even go to Hagerstown when we need to. Zero Fox Mike, when it was in Shenandoah, since it was stuck there, we had an oil change and had him look at the brakes. So we try to use and utilize anybody we can to try to stay them and keep them on the line. All right, the preheat situation. We would like to go to an electrical system for next season. So we will be putting up a proposal to figure that out with the airport to see if we can do that so we can get rid of the propane and get rid of these heaters. Just because it'll be a lot easier. NAFC does everything electric. It's plugged in, no fuss, no muss. And it's a lot easier system to use. So hopefully by this time next year we'll be on an electric preheat system. All right, we're looking to put cameras. Alexis sort of mentioned the cameras, but we're looking to put cameras inside of the clubhouse, as well as put cameras looking out on our flight line, just to add to the security element to the club, so that if you might see them installed in the next 10 to 170 days, who the hell knows when we're going to get to it. We have the cameras, but we haven't gotten around to putting them in yet. So just to give you a heads up, so if you're doing anything crazy in the clubhouse, you might want to reconsider. Any questions on anything on that? Alrighty. All right, new assignment for next quarter. This is 2 short YouTube videos on the AWC website. How many use that website regularly? Okay, so in my opinion, eventually flight service is probably going to die in terms of having phone briefings. So most pilots are using the computer. Yes, sir.
We can't actually read all of the URLs.
I can put them up on the website.
Yeah, we'll put them up on the web. Plus, I send out the slides to you anyway. So these are 2 short videos. One of them's like 4 minutes. The other one's like 10 or 12 minutes. That sort of gives you a deeper understanding of this website, which it has a lot of stuff in there. So it's not a bad idea for those who know, and use it regularly. I use it regularly, but even looking at the videos, there was a lot of stuff there that I learned that I wasn't using before that I will use now that I've seen it. We'll post this up on the website. We'll also post the. It wasn't Deborah.
Too much water.
All right, upcoming safety meetings. We got one in June, September, and December. If anybody wants to plan that far ahead, they're all here at Perry's. Same format, 6 o'clock for a social hour, eat, drink. 7 o'clock is the safety meeting portion. No door prize today. We didn't have anything in Lost and Found that was worth anything. If you have any questions, problems, complaints, they all go to Sue. Bear with Sue and myself. Remember, we're volunteers. Ideally with Sue, it's email. With me, it's email or cell. It might take us a couple of days to get back to you. Biggest issue we have sometimes is on the currency thing. If you're going to fly on a Saturday and you check on Monday and you're out of currency and you're not going to be able to dispatch, don't wait till Thursday or Friday to try to reach out to us to fix that, because it may be tough to do it. I'm still working full time. Sue has a lot of not issues, but she's got a life and she's up in Philly and traveling. So be proactive if you can and let us know, and we can help you fix that stuff. Because it's a lot better to give us everybody remember Nick. Nick was real clear. If you didn't get to him early, he didn't care. And that's sort of, we care, but so the currency thing seems to be the biggest thing. Yes, Vicky.
I think most of the instructors can update currency as well.
Absolutely. The instructors have full access to currency, so you can bother them as well. That's fine with us. If it's an instructor you do not know or is not familiar with, they may ask some questions. They may even want to see your logbook before they sign you off. But don't be offended. This is security. So, we're trust but verify. So that's, just be cognizant of that. And it's not a bad idea if you send the email to Sue and myself, so there's a better chance that you get both of us to deal with that. Sue?
Those that belong to the other club, their currency, it doesn't read it. Remember,
Oh, yes. Okay, so we do have a few pilots who are using either the Dakota, or you have your own plane, or you have something like that. It's very seldom this has happened because we don't have many people doing that. But the system, if you don't use one of our planes in the last 90 days, but you are current because you've been flying a 172 or an Aero or something else somewhere where you're getting credit for it, it will not make you current. You'll have to talk to Sue and I about that in order to do that. And we always can ask for a logbook entry or something else on that. It's not happening that often. I think we've only had 2 people in the last 6 months that it's been an issue. But if that does apply to you, I would say fly our planes a little more often. That would be a good idea. But that's just that glitch on that. What else? Any other questions? Fletcher?
Is there any, I know we talked about it before, but is there anything in the works for us to be able to find the planes down at NASC?
I think that's a long-term plan to do that. Jenny, Frank, and Sue are hopefully having a meeting Friday, if we can. Frank, you want to talk about that?
The ambition is to make that happen. I didn't know you all were going to have a meeting, but my sense is that the planes are available to you now. But what you have to do is you have to come down to Lee. You have to meet with one of our flight instructors. You have to get familiar and pass course rules. You got to learn the handshake, if you would. After you've done that, you're more than welcome to come down and fly those airplanes, whether it be the multi-engine airplane or the 1000. So there should be, there may be some admin stuff that needs to be worked out, but I think if you make a phone call, you contact one of the flight instructors down there, you get checked out, you fill out an application form for that site and go through that extensive paperwork drill that we've created for you, okay? Then you're more than welcome to come down and jump the nose and go fly. So is that my overstepping?
No, it's always been our plan with Jenny and Frank to have reciprocity between the 2 organizations so that we can do that. So, yeah.
Some of our flight instructors have actually come up.
Yeah.
And I say our because we're all in the same group now. But some of the lead people have come up and operated tipping aircraft with students from the league.
Yep.
So, free coffee in the back room.
And I hear they're going to buy a couple of Cirruses too, real soon.
Thank you for the land.
Any other questions? See, you got anything else?
yes, sir.
All right, I think we're done. Thank you very much. Make sure you settle up with Deborah.
So I was the only one complaining about clemency because I felt really bad
No.
email exchange.
No, you're fine.
Because I really do appreciate all that you guys